Cherry blossom season is the most popular time of year to visit Japan, and you can see why. The last 2 weeks of March are also the holidays in Japan, so today we'll look at whether it's worth going to those popular crowded spots, how to find out whether the sakura are in full bloom in each place, what to do if you're too early or too late, and a selection of more off the beaten track places where you can avoid the crowds. If you find this useful, my 300-page Japan guidebook has lots more tips for planning your trip. There's a link in the description for where to get it. Now, none of the spots on this list are too far out of the way. I've kept it realistic with spots you can actually go to without too much trouble to make the most of your precious limited time in Japan. Of course, the quietest, most off the beaten track places are off the beaten track, away from central Tokyo where only locals go, but they will take you more time to get to. But first, is it worth going to the popular spots? I think they can be worth checking out too. Places like Ueno Park, Yoyogi Park, Shinjuku Park, Nakameguro tend to have cherry blossom festivals, and they'll be full of people having hanami parties, drinking and having picnics. Everyone is just so excited for the cherry blossoms because they don't last long and they're a sign of spring. I've found that excited, buzzing atmosphere is just as much of an experience as seeing the actual blossoms themselves, maybe even more so. And on the whole, when it's crowded, it tends to be a bit more bearable in Japan than some other countries. Obviously, it's a generalization, but in Japan, people tend to be more mindful of others and more respectful towards other people. Now, every year I see lots of people asking online whether the cherry blossoms are out yet at a particular spot or looking for the most recent pictures on Instagram. But the good news is that information is provided for you by the Japan Meteorological Corporation. As well as the cherry blossom forecast, they provide information about the status of the blossoms, not just for every town, but for every viewing spot all around Japan. You can look at the map and it tells you whether they're before or after full bloom. At the moment, of course, filming this in February, they're all still just buds. It's amazing the amount of information they provide. They also have an app you can buy called Sakura Navi. It tells you what spots are nearby, and you can collect virtual stamps for each one you visit. Last year, the cherry blossoms were so much later than usual. I felt really sorry for everyone who went at the usual time hoping to see them. When they bloom does depend on the weather and how warm it is, which can be unpredictable. Usually it's at the end of March, start of April. They don't last long, usually only about 2 weeks, which is part of why they're so special. So what can you do if you're too early or too late? Well, there are early and late blooming varieties. Some of the earliest are on the Izu Peninsula in Kawazu, which is doable as a day trip from Tokyo. The larger parks in Tokyo have a few early and late blooming varieties. You might not see as many as the main season, but last year, even in the first week of March, I saw a couple. You can look up the best spots to see them. If you're too early or late, you might be able to travel north or south to see them. The blossoms move like a wave across Japan as the temperature warms up in each place. So if you're early, you might be able to see them by going south or somewhere warmer, and if you're late, you could go north or into the mountains. You can get quite far on the Shinkansen. So you could go up into Tohoku on an extreme day trip, or in this mountainous region in central Japan, the temperatures are cooler, so they bloom slightly later. So on to the off the beaten track spots, and there'll be some ideas for routes you could take to enjoy them. And if you have any recommendations for spots you found, please share them in the comments. First is Asukayama Park in the north part of central Tokyo. It's a historic park with 650 trees. Here it is in a woodblock print by Hiroshige. It's thought to be one of the first places where people enjoyed picnics under the cherry blossoms. To get there, go to Oji Station on the Tokyo Metro. You can also get there on the Toden Arakawa line, also known as the Sakura Tram, which, as the name suggests, has nice views of the cherry blossoms. You could take the tram from Ikebukuro. It goes through Sugamo, which is known as Grandma's Harajuku. It's a lovely chilled place to visit. I've got a video about it. If you get off at Oji Ekimai station, you could take the Asukayama Park monorail up to the park. It's free, it's just a very short 2-minute ride. It's there just to make the park more accessible. It's called the Asukarago, like escargot in French, because it looks like a snail. There are 3 small museums in the park. You can see the Shinkansen line from some areas, and in the children's play area there's an old steam train engine and a tram. Next is Asakusa Sumida Park, which is really close to Sensoji in Asakusa. You could stop off here on the way between Sensoji and the Skytree. Sumida Park's on both sides of the river, the more spacious parts on the Skytree side, but the cherry blossoms are on the Asakusa side. It's a kilometre long with about 500 trees. Here's where you can get those views of the Skytree with the cherry blossoms in the foreground, or you could take a boat trip on the river and enjoy the views from there. In the evening, the blossoms are lit up so you can enjoy the illuminations after dark. It looks like they're glowing. There are also festival stalls and those iconic pink lanterns. Next is Kasai Rinkai Park, which is about 14 minutes from Tokyo Station to Kasai Rinkai Park Station on the Keio line. It's almost at Tokyo Disney. If you're in Toyosu for Team Lab Planets, take the Rinkai line to Shinkiba, then you're just one stop away. It's a large park with over 700 cherry blossom trees. There's one avenue that's 240 metres long. There's also an aquarium, a large Ferris wheel, which was once the largest in the world, and a wildlife area for seabirds. And as it's by the sea, there's also a beach. Next is Shiori Park, which is a bit smaller with 250 trees. This one's up the river north of Sumida Park in Asakusa. There's a couple of stations nearby, but it could be nice to walk there from Sumida Park. It's about 2 miles, about a 40-minute walk alongside the river. Next is Sotobori Park, which is a long park in central Tokyo, about 2 kilometers long. It goes from Yotsuya Station all the way to Iidabashi Station, with Ichigaya Station in the middle. It's also alongside a river, which is the river you can see if you go on the JR Chuo or Sobu line across Tokyo. So you can get views of the cherry blossoms, the river and the trains. The bridges that go across the river are also a good spot to take photos. You could take a nice route between Sotobori Park and Chidori-ga-Fuchi, which is the moat of the Imperial Palace. That's a really popular spot for cherry blossoms and definitely not off the beaten path at all. At Chidori-ga-Fuchi, you can hire a rowing boat to enjoy the views from the water, and it's also illuminated at night. And on the way between them is Yasukuni Shrine, which also has cherry blossoms. That's a special place because it's where you can see Tokyo's sample tree. There are 58 of these sample trees around Japan, and they're used to say when cherry blossom season has officially started. Once there are 5 or 6 flowers on the sample tree at Yasukuni Shrine, that's when cherry blossom season has started in Tokyo. Then when 80% of the tree is flowering, that's when it's officially full bloom. So that'd be a pretty good site to add to your cherry blossom tour between Chidori-ga-Fuchi with the moat and the rowing boats, and Sotobori Park with the river and the trains. Next is Toneri Park, which is a little bit north of central Tokyo, but it's only 15 minutes from Nippori Station, which is on the JR Yamanote line, to Toneri Koen Station on the Nippon Toneri Liner, which is a driverless train. It's a spacious park with 1,000 cherry blossom trees. On the 29th and 30th of March this year, it's the Senbon Sakura Festival. Senbon Sakura means 1,000 cherry trees. There'll be 100 stalls with lots of delicious street food. If you're taking the train there from Nippori Station, you'll be really close to another spot, Yanaka Cemetery. Now, this isn't a place for picnics or drinking because obviously it's a cemetery, so you have to be quieter and more respectful. But it's a more peaceful experience and very picturesque with all the sakura. And you might see some cats. The whole of Yanaka is a really relaxing place to just stroll around. You can see what it's like in my video. As well as the main Yanaka Ginza shopping street, I enjoy just wandering around the alleyways there. Netsu Shrine is lovely with a mini trail of red torii gates. Slightly later into April, there's an azalea festival there. And finally, Jindaiji Botanical Garden has 750 cherry blossom trees, including early and late blooming varieties. It's 500 yen to get in. Between February and April, the garden has continuous flower festivals with plum blossoms, azalea and sakura. That's in Chofu, which is another really chill place to visit that's completely different to central Tokyo, but only 16 minutes from Shinjuku Station on the Keio line. I've got a video about the other things you can do there. So that's really just a few. There are many more spots. Tell me your recommendations in the comments. So I hope you managed to catch the Sakura this spring. Keep an eye out for special Sakura flavoured snacks, special merch and illuminations at night time. And keep an eye on the forecast to find the best spots nearby. And I'll see you next week with more Japan videos on Thursday. Bye bye.